New York City. 2 months had passed since Steve, Blake, and Susan discovered their powers. The 3 friends had spent nearly every day training. Steve had mastered the golden energy blasts fired from his eyes. Susan had pushed her telekinetic abilities to incredible levels. She could stop moving objects, hurl cars through the air, and even fly by manipulating her own body. Blake's healing powers had grown stronger as well. Not only could he heal injuries, but he could also restore damaged objects and regenerate his own body from nearly any wound. Yet despite all their progress, one question remained. What were we even doing with these powers? Susan asked. The 3 were gathered in an abandoned warehouse they often used as a training ground. Steve folded his arms. What do you mean? Susan shrugged. Shouldn't we be doing something important? Helping people? Saving lives? Steve raised an eyebrow. You want to become superheroes? Why not? Blake nearly choked on his drink. Whoa, slow down there. Susan rolled her eyes. I'm serious. Blake pointed at himself. You guys got the cool powers. He pointed at Steve. Laser eyes. Then at Susan. Flying telekinetic powerhouse. Then back to himself. And me. He sighed dramatically. I'm basically a repairman. Susan laughed. You can literally heal people. Exactly, Blake replied. I'm a magical first aid kit. The 3 laughed. For a brief moment, everything felt normal. But normal wouldn't last. Jason had never forgotten. Not for a single day. Years before the Egypt incident, he had lost both of his parents. He bounced from foster home to foster home until eventually ending up at the same school as Steve, Blake, and Susan. Steve had been the first person to stand up for him. Blake had become his closest friend. Susan had become the sister he never had. They weren't just friends. They were family, which made the betrayal hurt even more. Jason didn't simply want revenge. He wanted them to feel what he felt. Loss, fear, abandonment, and if that meant dragging New York into darkness, so be it. Guys, the warehouse doors burst open. Blake rushed inside, holding his phone. His face was pale. Steve immediately knew something was wrong. What happened? Blake shoved the phone toward them. It's all over the news. Susan and Steve stared at the screen. Their expressions changed instantly. Black mist covered entire city blocks. Terrifying shadow creatures were attacking civilians. Police officers were overwhelmed. People were running for their lives. The news anchor looked terrified. What the hell? Steve whispered. Susan clenched her fists. This is our chance. Steve looked at her. Our chance. To help. A smile appeared on her face. To finally use these powers for something that matters. Blake nodded. You know what Superman always says. Steve groaned. No. With great power comes great responsibility. Steve stared at him. That's Spider-Man. Blake paused. Close enough. Susan laughed. Let's go. 2 hours later. Downtown Manhattan. The city looked like a war zone. Black mist swallowed entire streets. Abandoned vehicles littered the roads. Storefronts were shattered. Distant screams echoed through the darkness. Steve swallowed hard. This is way worse than I imagined. Even Susan looked nervous. The mist seemed alive. Moving. Watching. Waiting. Then a shadow creature lunged from the darkness. Susan reacted instantly. With a wave of her hand, the monster slammed into a nearby building. Steve fired twin golden blasts. The creature exploded into darkness. The battle had begun. For the next hour, the 3 fought throughout the city. Susan used her telekinesis to protect civilians and destroy shadow demons. Steve blasted creatures apart with golden energy. Blake rescued the wounded and healed injuries that should have been fatal. Together they worked flawlessly, like a real team, like heroes. Eventually the mist began to retreat. The shadow demons fled. Cheers erupted from nearby civilians. The city was safe. For the first time since gaining their powers, the 3 smiled. They had done it. They had actually saved people. Then a voice echoed through the street. Deep, cold, terrifying. Not bad. The celebration stopped instantly. Silence fell over the city. A massive figure emerged from the darkness. Shadow covered his body like living armor. Red eyes glowed beneath a hood of darkness. Shadow demons gathered around him, kneeling, waiting. obeying. The temperature seemed to drop. Steve felt fear crawl down his spine. Something about this figure felt familiar. Susan felt it too. Then the figure spoke again. "What?" His voice dripped with bitterness. "You don't recognize me?" The shadows parted. The three friends froze. "No," Blake whispered. The figure stepped forward. "You left me for dead." Blake's eyes widened. "Jason." The world seemed to stop. Steve stared in disbelief. "What happened to you?" Jason laughed. A cold, empty laugh. "You're about to find out." He moved. Nobody saw him move. One moment he stood 50 feet away. The next, he was directly in front of Steve. Steve reacted on instinct. Twin golden energy blasts erupted from his eyes. The beams passed straight through Jason's shadowy body. No damage. No effect. Steve barely had time to process what happened. Jason's fist crashed into his chest. Boom! The shockwave shattered windows. Steve was launched through 3 parked cars before crashing into a building. The street shook. Steve didn't get back up. Oh no! Susan immediately flew into the air. Every instinct screamed at her to stay away. Cars ripped from the street. One after another she hurled them toward Jason. The Shadow Lord didn't dodge. He walked through the destruction. The vehicles shattered against his body, as if they were made of paper. Meanwhile, Blake sprinted toward Steve. His hands glowed green. "Come on." The healing energy flowed into Steve. Slowly, painfully, Steve opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Jason, standing untouched in the middle of the street, waiting, watching, like a predator. Steve's heart sank. They couldn't win. Not against this. Susan landed beside them. She was breathing heavily. Jason began walking toward them. Each step felt like a countdown to disaster. Then Steve remembered. Susan. She looked at him. Now! Her eyes widened. The emergency plan. If things went wrong, run. Susan nodded. Without hesitation, she grabbed both boys. The 3 joined hands. Blue energy erupted around them. Space twisted. Reality folded. Jason lunged forward. Too late. Boom! The 3 heroes vanished. Silence returned. The Shadow Lord stood alone. The shadows around him swirled violently. His red eyes burned with fury. For the second time, they had escaped him. Like, subscribe, and follow for more juicy content.